A very warm and cheerful greetings to each and everyone present over here. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of St. Xavier's College of Management and Technology, this is your moderator come host for the day, Keshav Soni of third year Department of Business Administration, and I extend a very warm and hearty welcome to each and everyone present over here. Let's begin. So once Steve Jobs said, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by the dogma which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Very true, isn't it? Every kind of issues nowadays, whether it be social, political, or economic, is consisting of negative vibes, although it depends upon us how we take it. The major challenges of life remain unanswered when we started to strive so hard to fight back to the possibilities of new normal, where each and every one second chance our way of living. Now, our lives are not the same, and different is not so possible in the pandemic. A sudden virtual has taken place where we actually miss the offline meetup, although the show of life must go on, and learning should never stop because knowledge is power, and the power is the key to success. So, without any delay, let me welcome a personality who owes no introduction. I delightfully welcome our resource person and our guest speaker, Dr. Saikat Guha. It's an honor to have you here, sir. Also, I heartily welcome the former principals of St. Michael's School, Father P.T. Augustine S.J. and Father Norbert Menezes S.J., our rector, Father Joseph Thadavanal S.J., our principal, Father Dr. T. Nishant S.J., vice principal, Father Dr. Martin Forrest S.J., members of the management, respected professors, staff members, and one and all present over here. It is the mark of our undying tradition to invoke the Almighty at the beginning of any important event. So, I would like to call Adviti of BBA third year for the prayer as we first pray for gain of strength and inner peace. To you, Adviti.
I request everyone to close their eyes for the prayer. Let's place ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dear Lord, we offer everything to you during this interactive session. May we ask for your blessings and divine providence that the activities set for this undertaking be successful and effective. May we also retain the invaluable knowledge and learning experiences that we derive from this activity for actual application when we leave this venue. Your generous blessing would mean the success of this session. We know that without it, we can do nothing. May we be living witnesses of your genuine love through the implementation of the knowledge acquired through this activity. Grant us your divine wisdom as we go about our daily task after this session. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
A day without prayer is a day without blessing, and a life without prayer is a life without power. So, thank you for this much needed, powerful prayer in this beautiful morning. Now, I would like to request our principal, Father Dr. T. Nishant S.J., to address and welcome our resource person come guest speaker, Dr. Saikat Guha, for his precious time. Over to you, Father.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello? Am
Yes,
I
Yes,
Father, you
audible?
are
Father.
audible.
Okay, thank you. So, respected Dr. Saikat Guha, eminent scientist and speaker of the day, Father P.T. Augustine S.J., Father Norbert Menezes S.J., former principals of St. Michael's School when Dr. Saikat was in the primary and high school respectively. Father Joseph Thadavanal S.J., the rector of our college, Father Dr. Martin Porras S.J., the vice principal, other members of management, committed and loyal staff, lovable students, and other participants. Good morning, namaste, salam. I'm extremely happy to welcome you all to this interactive and motivational talk by Dr. Saikat Guha, who is requested to share his success journey from Patna to USA. We celebrate the fact that he hails from Bihar, and thus he has made every Bihari proud by becoming a recognized scientist in Arizona University, USA, at a very young age of 40 or so, maybe a little less. It is an affirmation of the fact that a Bihari has great potentials. Garv se kaho, hum Bihari hai. It's a matter of joy also that St. Michael's High School in Patna, a Jesuit institution, played a significant role in shaping the present status of Dr. Saikat Guha. And we have both the principals with us in this session. He took part in mathematical and physics Olympiads. He was one among the first in the Indian team of 5 students who represented India at the 29th International Physics Olympiad held in Iceland in July 1998. His further studies in electrical engineering in Indian Institute of Technology paved way to his entry into one of the most prestigious institutes in the world, namely Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, to pursue a master's and then a PhD. Dr. Saikat has received many awards for his contributions in the field of the quantum limits of optical communications and quantum secure communications and optical sensing. Recently, he has been appointed the director of quantum networks in Arizona University. There are many other laurels and achievements to his credit, which cannot find a mention here because of want of time. There is another reason to celebrate the person of Dr. Saikat, and that is because he is the son of Professor S.N. Guha, the first Vice Chancellor of Aryabhat Knowledge University, AKU. Our college was the first private college to be affiliated since the inception of AKU in 2012. Since Dr. Saikat studied in St. Michael's High School, the Vice Chancellor was well aware of the resourcefulness of Jesuit institutions, and we benefited much from his trust in us. I take this opportunity to thank the former Vice Chancellor, who is a real gentleman in all respects and had proudly confided in me that his son is a scientist in USA. I think it's time for me to stop here, and before I wind up, I would like to present an honorary award to Dr. Saikat Guha on behalf of our college. And may I request Mr. Samarayas, Assistant Professor in BBA Department, the organizer of this event, to present it. Over to you, Samarayas. Yes, can you make it bigger? We can't see. Hello? Xavier, yeah, Xavier Pride of Bihar Award 2020 goes to Dr. Saikat Guha. He has been conferred this award in recognition of being appointed the Director of Quantum Networks, Arizona University, USA. May God continue to bless you and lead you to greater heights in the service of God's people. That's it from us. Thank you very much. Once again, we reiterate that we are very proud of you. Jai Xaviers, Jai Bharat. Over to you, Anchor.
Thank you so much, Father. Now, I would request the former principal of St. Michael's School, Patna, Father P.T. Augustine S.J., to address the gathering and provide us with his valuable learning. Over to you, Father.
Father Joy, unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, Father Augustine, please go ahead.
I'm extremely delighted to be with you and meet you. This is a very unexpected event to meet some of the old boys. That is the first, number one. I was extremely happy with meeting some of the older boys whom I had not met for years in India. So in between I had been in USA several times and had an opportunity not only to teach but also to study some of the things. Studying is an ongoing process. You don't get stopped with the number of years or number of courses that you undertake. And I got away from, I retired from teaching only in 1976. I'm now in 81. So you retire early, but young. So best of luck for you and all the best for the order that you're doing and good doing for the welfare of humanity and the welfare of the human race and most especially welfare of the people of Bihar. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Father, for your motivating words. Now, I would request the former principal of St. Michael's School, Patna, Father Norbert Menezes, SJ, to address the gathering and inspire us with his words. Over to you, Father.
Dr. Saikat Guha and all the participants of this interactive session. I recall Saikat Guha because when I was a principal, he was in one sense very outstanding in his science projects. And he did not make big noise, no flashes, but in a very simple way, he brought out his creative talents. And the science teachers brought that to my notice. And I was very appreciative because at a young age, he continued to play very innovative ways of presenting the projects, whereas others would do something very familiar or similar. But what I liked of Saket, I remember very well of his days is, in one sense, he was an all-rounder also, very sociable. Well, sports was not his big cup of tea, but other areas where he was very good, very jovial person. He had a good circle of friends. And I remember once when he was in the 10th class or 12th class, the teachers brought his science copies, physics or chemistry or whatever it is, especially physics. They said, when they saw his paper, they said, look, he was to the point, getting good marks, so neat paper. And they told me, here is a promising student of our school who will make his mark in the global world and in the scientific world. And today, that day, I feel very, very proud of you, Saket, that you have made St. Michael's School proud, your family proud, the state of Bihar proud, and India proud. And you are contributing to this global scientific research and scientific temper. We have a lot of Jesuits, a lot of alumni of St. Michael's School in the States. I hope you get an opportunity to connect with them. And I wish you all the best in the days to come, that you will able to inspire many young Indians, young students to continue the rigor in studies, to continue the scientific temper, and also the humanity you display in the school, that all students would try to strive in their life beyond marks of being a better person and becoming a contributing member of the society. Wish you all the best, Saket Guha. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Father, for your kind words. Now, once Charles Dickens said, "The sun himself is weak when he first rises, and gathers strength and courage as the day gets on." With this courageous thought, I would like to welcome our resource person, Dr. Saikat Guha, to provide us with his powerful and positive talk. And also, I would like to remind the audience that after the talk, we are going to have a question and answer session. So do not forget to write your queries in the chat box. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very, very much. This was such an honor. Thank you, Father Nishant, first for organizing this and inviting me here. Such a great pleasure to be here. I so wish that I could actually visit St. Michael's and St. Xavier's College of Management in person for this event, and hopefully that will also happen sometime, not so far into the future. Thank you for that award. That's very humbling. And it's unbelievable for me to have an opportunity to actually see Father Augustine here. I mean, thanks so much for arranging that, and thank you, Father Augustine, for your kind words. Thank you, Father Norbert. I have so many fond memories myself of St. Michael's, not just academics, as you said, but everything else, including those talent shows, those all the social events, the fairs. Father Cox's library, so many memories. I mean, those 12 years were one of my most amazing durations of my life. So thank you again. So what Father Nishant had asked me to do is to tell you all the story of my life. So I'll try my best, Father, to do that. And feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions, anybody in the panel. And anybody in the audience, if you have questions, definitely put that in the chat window. This will not be a scientific or a technical talk, but I just hope to address what Father Nishant wanted me to do. So I was born in Patna. I was born and raised in Patna, as Father just said. I was actually born just down the street from St. Michael's in the Kurji Hospital, and I grew up in a joint family in my grandfather's house in Boring Canal Road. And I had a really wonderful childhood growing up with all my cousins, my friends, my neighbors, and my really big extended family. And our house in Boring Road, it used to be the hub of activity during all the festivals, the Saraswati Pujas, Diwali, Holi. And my family is Bengali. We hail from East Bengal. But we have been in Bihar for more than 3 generations. So over these generations, we had imbibed in ourselves a lot of the local Bihari traditions. So I still remember my grandmother would cook chitoi pithas, which are a Bengali Makar Sankranti delicacy. And that same chulha, she would make tekwas and malpuas during Chhat. It was amazing. I mean, we had a wonderful childhood growing up in Patna. I went to St. John's for my nursery and then to Don Bosco's for a couple of years during my LKG and UKG. And thereafter, starting 1986 to 1998, I was in St. Michael's from class 1 to class 12. My father, Professor S.N. Guha, is a professor of physics, as Father Nishant just said. And he spent almost all his career at the Patna Science College as a professor. My mother was a teacher of Sanskrit at Rabindra Balika Vidyalaya. It's a government school in Rajendra Nagar, Patna. I must say I owe it to my mother for her for my fluent reading and writing of Bengali as a language, and also the keen interest that I developed in Sanskrit. As a language, which I think perhaps it's the most scientific and algorithmic languages in the world. It's a really, really fascinating language, which I later on learned through my Sanskrit teacher at St. Michael's for a few years when I was in class 7. So, through my childhood, one of the things I really enjoyed and I deeply value is my father's role in inculcating in me the habit to be inquisitive, to question. to be inquisitive about nature, about every single thing that you see around yourself. And the most important thing is that he never gave me a factually incorrect answer because I was a child asking those questions. So I still remember my 6-year-old self asking him one day why the light bulb switches off instantly when you turn it off, but then the ceiling fan, it takes a while for it to stop when you turn the switch off, right? Why is it so? Why isn't the ceiling fan stop at once when you turn the switch off? And that was a hard one for my father to explain to a 6-year-old. But I wouldn't ever forget the wonderful lesson on the Newton's first law and the inertia of motion I got that day, which got imprinted into my intuitions of how nature works, how physics works. And this is just one example. And so I was immersed in analytical thinking in physics, and also not just because of my father, but because of his, he had a very good, close group of friends who I grew up very closely with. They all happened to be physics professors around different colleges in Patna, Patna Science College, BN College, etc. And they were professors Dev Mukherjee, Professor Ashok Chaudhary, and Professors Palit and Professor Roy. And we used to travel together as families and go on long road trips. The longest ones that we went to were one on Gopalpuram Sea in the border of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. And another trip that we went to with all these families were in Valmiki Nagar in North Bihar at the border of Nepal. I learned many things from them. And over many conversations, many visits, several things like, even things like how does an electric bell works? How does a motor work? I still remember when learning how that electric bell works, that the fact that you can wrap around a copper wire around an iron rod and put a battery on the two ends of that copper wire, and suddenly that rod turns into a magnet, and the fact that you can turn that battery off and on, and that magnet will become an iron and a magnet, and that's what makes that gong go up and down. Just making that happen at home with a piece of metal rod and some copper wire that I got from the local fanwala. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, just seeing that happen in front of my eyes. And so most importantly, in addition to learning these little things and seeing how nature works, understanding that analytical thinking, the learning how to think and question analytically and creatively was one of the most important values that I learned very early in life. Another example that just came to my mind, I'm sure many of you have seen this. When you drink a cup of tea or a cup of milk, you have some light bulb or tube light in the room, you would see a very interesting shape of a curve. It looks kind of like this. It's like one round shape and another round shape in the curve, in the cup. And I asked my father, what is that? Why do we see that particular curve? And there's a name for that curve. It's called the Caustic Curve, Caustic. And you can actually explain that curve, that shape of that curve, simply by knowing the following two facts: that light travels in straight lines, and the second being that when you reflect of light on a mirror or any surface, that the angle of reflection is equal to the angle of incidence. And just by these two facts, you can actually draw a circular shape boundary, a circular shape mirror, and put many parallel lines of optical rays going and hitting that circular surface. And for each one, draw a tiny little tangent where that light ray hits the surface, and then draw angle of incidence equal to angle of reflection and draw the reflected beam. And just do that, and if you draw enough of these parallel rays and draw the reflected beams, you will actually see that very beautiful caustic curve emerge. And I still remember that one whole afternoon I took when I was just sitting with a piece of paper. I took a scale and my ruler and my pencil and actually draw those lines and saw that curve emerge. It was amazing to see how nature works in such simple ways that you can describe in such simple rules, and it just lives on with you. The other thing I really value about my early childhood is my exposure to music, which played a huge part in my upbringing, in my in my growth and in my way of thinking. So, and I also credit that, by the way, to my father, who introduced me to violin when I was 7 years old, when I was in class 2. I had the rare opportunity to learn from T.N. Patnaik ji, who is now passed away a few years ago. He was one of the eminent All India Radio artists in Patna. He was originally trained in the Carnatic tradition of music, and then he played for most of his life in Hindustani music. So I used to go to his home every Sunday. Initially, I would go to a school that he used to teach in Rajendranagar, and then after he became old and could not travel to that school that often, I used to go to his home. My father would take me, and then later on, I started going on my own, and that was an amazing journey. And I pursued violin all the way through. When I was in class 11, I took the Sangeet Prabhakar, which is the bachelor's level diploma that I have in Hindustani music, and I still, to this day, I play my violin. It's been an amazing resource for me to take my mind, take my brain away from into a totally different realm, into a different world from other things that we do, both in personal life as well as in professional lives. Speaking of St. Michael's, as I said, those 12 years was really one of the most treasured durations of my life. I am still friends with many of my classmates. So thank you, Father Norbert, for mentioning that. I do definitely want to see if there's a Old Boys Association or some other formal group of St. Michael's alumni. But I'm friends with several of my colleagues from back in St. Michael's days. I really enjoyed contributing to the Scan, which was the school magazine. And later on, when I was in class 11 and 12, I became the editor of Scan along with my friend Pranay Kumar. That was a lot of fun, even assimilating all those articles and coming up with those competitions that we ran. I loved table tennis. In St. Michael's growing up, I remember just those running to capture that table tennis board soon before that, right at the bell during the long breaks and the short breaks. Those concrete table tennis boards, those were amazing. I still play table tennis, handball, poolside parties, the canteen, and as I said, Father Cox's library, and organizing those assemblies that used to rotate among different sections, and so much more. I mean, St. Michael's was really a big part in my upbringing. During the time that I was a student there, I would say around class 6 to 7-ish, is where I developed a strong penchant for geometry, the field of mathematics where you draw pictures and prove theorems on lines and circles and arcs and so on. I got introduced to a book called Problems in Plane Geometry. This is a book written by a person called I.F. Sharigan. It was published by Mir Publishers, which is very hard to find these days. Mir doesn't publish anymore, but there's a publication house called CBS Publishers that reprints Mir Publications books. Anyhow, so that book to this day is still one of my most favorite books. The book literally, it lists about 200 problems. Okay, so it starts with problem 1, then problem 2, problem 3, and it starts from very, very basic problems, from problem 1. But by the time you go to say problem number 50, 60, 70, 80, the problems make you think harder and harder and harder, but in a way that if you are solving from problem 1 onwards, and if you have solved every single problem, it has been designed in a way that every new problem you solve only uses the tools and techniques and intuitions that you learned in the problems before that problem. So what happened was that it was so addictive. And by the way, that book had this is pre high school book, so it had no assumptions that you know calculus, trigonometry, or coordinate geometry. So this is just plain geometry. So during class 7 to 8, roughly 7 through class 7, 8, 9, and so on, we formed a small group of friends in school, and we started solving problems from that book competitively. So, some days we would catch up with our friends over tiffin break and say, "Oh, I'm in problem number 72," and somebody will say, "I'm in problem number 76." So it was a competitive feeling, but at the same time, we knew that you had to solve one problem at a time in order to go ahead. And that book really started getting me to think analytically, think creatively. Geometry is an amazing tool that lets your brain think in very creative ways. And it's very important, geometry's role in analytical thinking, before you get introduced to all those sophisticated tools of coordinate geometry, trigonometry, and calculus that you learn when you go into class 11 and 12. So when I was in class 9, I decided to sit in for the math Olympiad. I mean, it was a little early because normally you would give an Olympiad in class 10 or 11, mostly in 11. But I so enjoyed mathematics, I decided to do that. And so I ranked second in Bihar and got a chance to go to Bhagalpur to take part in the Indian National Mathematical Olympiad. I did not go further after that, but that already was a very good experience for me. And then a year later, I decided, so by the way, so that year, India decided as a country to participate in the International Physics Olympiad. So these Olympiads are, they are an annual event. So there is one in math, one in physics, one in chemistry. Nowadays there's one in informatics also. So the Physics Olympiad has been happening since back in the early 70s. But in 1998 is when the Indian government, led by a team at TIFR in Mumbai, they decided to partake in the Olympiad. But how would they select that team of 5 students that they had to send? So what they decided that they would use this examination called the National Standard Examination in Physics, which used to happen already. About 30,000 students take that every year. They used that to select the first group of 200 students. And so I took that exam that year because I knew about the Olympiad and I decided to try it because Olympiad examinations are, by the way, very different from, say, joint entrance examination that many of you preparing for engineering might know of, because it gives you a long time, 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours, and gives you 3 problems to solve. So most of the time when you're sitting and giving the exam, you're actually thinking, you're not writing anything. So it was a very different type of examination. So they selected 200 students from that 30,000 students or so. And then there was a 2-day exam that happened called Indian National Physics Olympiad, from which they selected 35 students. And those 2 days, one was a theory day, one was an experimental day. Both days, they gave you just 2 problems each, and you had about 4 hours or so. So that was quite interesting. So those 35 students, when I came back after in Indian National Physics Olympiad, I got that letter in mail in Patna, and it said that you have been asked to go to Mumbai for a month. And that was exciting, but at the same time, it was it was quite something, because I had never actually lived outside of Patna for that long at a stretch. So that month would be my first time actually living by myself, without my family and my friends, in a totally unfamiliar setting. But that was very, very exciting. So I went to Mumbai and spent a month with another 34 other students in the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, which is a branch of TIFR close to Mankur. The best physics teachers from all over India came to teach us. We would have theory lessons all morning, and in the afternoon we were paired in groups of 2 or 3, and we would do an experiment. Every day we did an experiment, and they gave the experiments in a way that most of the thinking that you have to do to come up with how to do your error analysis, or how to even set up that experiment, how to do what they're asking you to do, you have to all think yourself. So they did not instruct every single step. Okay? Well, they were very high level, open-ended questions. So that was the first time I started thinking in a way that later on became doing research, thinking of new things, thinking of ways to innovate. So that was a very, very good experience. And during the whole month-long process, they did a continuous set of evaluation through tests and exams and everything. And eventually, by the end of the month, they selected 5 students, the 5 ranking students, and I was in that team. And then we were told that, well, now is the hard part, because India is the first time India is going to send a team. So, you guys, all 5 of you will have to spend 14 more days in an intensive training camp in Bombay. So we came back to Patna. I came back to Patna, and the other 4 students, they all went back to their homes. We reassembled in Mumbai, and we for 14 days we were basically locked up, and we solved every single problem and from 1967 that had been given out in physics Olympiads, but also in a very innovative way. The professors who taught us, they showed us how to think, how to innovate, how to think of new problems. And then we boarded that plane to go to Iceland in Reykjavik in the summer of '98. And I would forget, that was terrifying. That was the first time I actually got on a transcontinental plane. I'd never sat on a plane journey for that long before. So the government, they actually made us nice suits and ties and everything, and they got us the official Indian team's dress. So that was quite an experience. So we went to Iceland, and that was the first time I was outside India. Okay, so that was an eye opener for me. So we were these top 5 students in India, so we were very proud. But then when we went there, all these students from all these other countries who were competing, that was the first time India participated. As a team, we ranked 10th, okay, out of 56 countries. So it was okay. We did well overall, and I got an award for the experimental component. But overall, our marks were not as competitive as some of the high-ranking countries in that year. China was a country that sent 5 students. All 5 of them got gold medals. Ahead of us were also countries like Romania, even Iran, several countries. And we learned from them as to how they taught their students. Our team leads who went with us, 2 professors, they talked to their team leads, and we got a lot of good lessons that we learned. I got to travel Iceland. So that was really amazing. So it's a country that has a very interesting geology. It is a country of fire and ice. Okay, so Iceland actually sits on a plate tectonic divide. So it is slowly separating. And because of that plate separating, there's a lot of geothermal activity, a lot of geysers and hot springs. But at the same time, because it is so far up north, there's also a lot of glaciers. And because of the glaciers, you get cold water from there. So the whole country's hot water and cold water supply, it all comes from nature. Everything is from nature. So it's a very, very green country in that sense. So anyhow, so we came back, and since then, by the way, Physics Olympiad in India has been consistently performing extremely well, coming in the top 5 ranks, and now consistently Indian students are getting gold medals in the International Physics Olympiad. So that was our first experience, but since then, we've been doing very well. So I came back, and after that, during that time when I was in the camp, our JEE results had come out, IIT JEE results. And I decided to go to IIT Kanpur to pursue electrical engineering as my bachelor's. And by the way, speaking of JEE, another thing I would like to say especially to the students who might be preparing for that, if there are students in class 11, 12, and so on, that this is just my personal advice, that don't work too hard in solving too many problems. Focus on the principles and the fundamentals. And that's what my father also encouraged me to do, and I really benefited from that. Focusing on understanding the science, the physics, the mathematics, the chemistry, whatever you are learning is much, much more important than to take all those brilliance and FITG and all those classes. So then time came, the end of the summer of '98, that I packed my stuff to go to Kanpur. And that was a big day for me, because I realized that was the time I was going to leave Patna forever. So I had 18 wonderful years in Patna, and it was hard. I left home for the first time, and that's it. I mean, I knew that I probably would not ever return full time to live in Patna. Who knows if I might in the future, but so that was quite hard. But then living by myself in Kanpur was such a good experience, such a good learning experience. Living with my friends, with others who I had not before lived with. We didn't have cell phones back in the day. So we would speak with our parents once every week on a hall phone. Hall is just a name for hostels in IIT Kanpur. So there was one person who would manage that phone, who would come below your wing and shout your name and say your family is calling you. And we didn't have that much time, because that one single phone had to be used by all these hundreds of students in the hostel. I learned Taekwondo when I was in IIT Kanpur. So that was another very good, it teaches you discipline. That was also a very good experience. Through my studies in IIT Kanpur, I mean, of course, I studied electrical engineering and all the regular courses in engineering. But something I really valued during my engineering days, those 4 years in IIT Kanpur, my BTech, was that there were several core courses like manufacturing. Okay, when you manufacture, when you do beat metal and melt iron and cast iron, and there was one that course everybody had to take. Similarly, a course on programming, a course on electrical circuits. So there were some core courses that every engineering student had to take. And as part of that learning, we had a lot of times and opportunities where students work together. Okay, so that taught teamwork, creativity, research. So that was the first time, I got the training in doing, creative work together with other students. And then I spent about a month when I was in my third year as a summer intern in EPFL in Lausanne, in Switzerland.
Dr. Saikat?
Yes.
You may have to speed up a little bit if you want us to finish by 10, because lots of questions have come up. So
I see.
A little bit of your story into the United States and how it happened there will be of great interest to us. Students would like to know, they also want to go to the United States for
Absolutely.
studies. So,
okay,
thank you.
Shall I take maybe 5 more minutes or so?
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay. So actually, that was that really was a good foray into my next phase in my life when I came to the US. So after IIT Kanpur in 2002, when I even applied for graduate school, and I got admitted in 6 universities. I got admission letters from MIT, from Berkeley, from UIUC, and Stanford, and a couple of others. And these were, I wanted to study engineering. And actually, my love for quantum information theory, the field that I work in, it started during that summer internship I did at EPFL during the time that I was in IIT. So that was my first entry point into learning how this new world of quantum mechanics, which is a subject of physics, can actually have important things that can teach you on how you process information. So I came to MIT. My advisor, Jeff Shapiro, he was my PhD advisor. I did my master's and my PhD with him. So my work was on understanding how can you, by thinking of light you see around you, as a quantum mechanical object. Okay, there's something called a photon, which is a quantum particle of a light, can give you more insight and deeper insights on what are the fundamental limits of how you can extract, encode, and process information in photons, with applications to sensors, communications, computing, and so on. And then another thing what happened when I came to the US was a culture shock. There were lots of goods and there were lots of bads, right? So some of the good things that in the US, which I initially was shocking, that people used to call professors by names, and they don't mean disrespect, but they see everybody as equals, and I do the same now in my group. So in the US, there was no class. The cleaner, the carpenter, the professor, the banker, the construction worker, everybody, they all had the same status in society, which is very good, which is something that I've never seen in India. The diversity, okay. And then the people from everywhere in the world. In India is not that diverse as the US. And then the cold weather. I'd never through Patna and Kanpur, I had been always in hot weather. Boston is extremely cold. But Boston was also a culturally very, very active city. And it was during the time that I was in Boston and MIT that I met my current violin teacher, Professor George Ruckert, who is one of the earliest students of Ali Akbar Khan Sahib. He plays the sarod. And I started learning Hindustani music back again from him. And then when I was in 2006, towards the end of my graduate school, is when I met my wife, Sujata. This was 14 years ago. And she was a graduate student in Columbia University doing her master's in social work. And she had done her master's in human rights in Calcutta University. And the thing that attracted me to her was music, our love for travel, and also what I learned from her and really valued was not to be afraid of trying new things and questioning norms. So she is now in Boston working as the deputy director at the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts. So we got married when we were both students, and and then after that I graduated in 2008. After I finished my PhD, my first job, where I continued for about 10 years, I joined as a scientist in a company called Bolt, Beranek and Newman, BBN Technologies. So this company was involved in inventing the first instance of what we know as the internet today. It was called the ARPANET program. So this ARPANET program It was back in the 70s. It was instituted to connect computers into networks for having computers talk to each other. And with my colleagues, we formed a new group called Quantum Information Processing Group. We did a lot of work on government funding, on funding from the National Science Foundation, from DoD, from DARPA, and so on. And in 2017 is when the University of Arizona, based in Tucson in Arizona, they invited me to start a new activity and slash center in quantum information processing. So University of Arizona is the world renowned for its College of Optical Sciences. So that's the #1 college in the world for studying optics and photonics. And I started an activity in quantum information there. So after 15 years of cold weather in Boston, I was now back in Tucson with a very warm and dry climate. So it was like back in Kanpur and Patna days. So anyhow, so because of, I came to Tucson with a purpose of starting this activity. I hired many professors, new students, postdocs, and so on. And eventually just a couple of months ago, as Father Nishan just said, I got a 10-year-long $51 million grant from the National Science Foundation to establish what is called the Center for Quantum Networks. It's the first concerted activity in the world, in the United States especially, to lay the foundations of the future quantum internet. Like if I were to repeat that ARPANET program that happened in the 70s connecting computers, but now connecting quantum computers, which doesn't work with bits, zeros and ones, but they work with qubits that can stay in a superposition of a 0 and 1 and can do new things that classical computers cannot. How will that internet look like? So it involves a very, very interdisciplinary research across spanning various disciplines like material science, computer science, electrical engineering, photonic engineering, computer networks theory, and on all sorts of areas. And then just yesterday evening, I attended a summit called the WebHub Summit, which I would really encourage all of you, if you can, to attend. It's a very good initiative started by our Pradhan Mantri Modi ji, and he kicked off the meeting 2 days ago. And this is to have a forum for discussion across Indian scientists abroad and Indian scientists in India to discuss new and emerging technologies such as quantum technologies and other technologies. So I'm involved in that, and it's been a great experience. So, well, with that, a few final things I would like to say before I wrap up. So just to the students especially, teach. You should pass your knowledge to others. It's very, very important. I personally love teaching, and coming back to academia after so many years, it's been a very rewarding experience for me. Because knowledge only grows by sharing with others. And the next thing is that you should learn, and not just from your teachers, but learn from everybody around you. Because there's something to learn from every single person who you encounter in your lives. And you are the best filter to identify what are the good things you wish to learn. And it's a lifelong process. And finally, you should create, put things together, bring your pool of knowledge to create new things yourself that may not have been created before. And those could be simple things like ideas. And there is joy in creation. And what I would like to close with is that I never have been chasing a destination. Right? I have followed my heart's desire. I did and still do what I love to do and strive to become better at it. And you should consider yourself successful, not necessarily, I'm just saying this, not necessarily if you make a lot of money or become famous. Those are good things if you get a lot of money and become famous. But if you can turn your passion, your love into what you do in your day-to-day basis, like ideally into your profession, that is success. So success is finding happiness. When you wake up from bed and look forward to the day ahead, you make the work itself so much fun that you don't care about the ultimate destination where you want to be headed. So anyhow, so with that, I would like to close and thank you all again for having me here, and would love to visit St. Michael's sometime soon in person, hopefully, not too far into the future. Thank you, Father Nishant, and back over to you for questions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for your elastic, which made this session so informative and interactive. It was an immense pleasure listening to you, sir, and your words will definitely keep us motivated. Now, there's a very true saying: if you want the answer, ask the question. So I would like to request our assistant professor and convener of this session, Samarya sir, to moderate the question and answer section. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me, Keshav? Okay.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
you're audible.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Guha. I have a lot of questions right now, so I have filtered few questions for you.
Sure.
Would you like me to speak one by one?
Sure, why not?
Oh, all right, sir. So here's the first question. This is from a computer application BCA student. Quantum in every field creates an enigma. What is quantum in the field of computer science, and what is the future of this field?
Okay, good question. As I said, that quantum mechanics, it extends the concept of the bit to a qubit. Okay, so your fundamental notion of the bit, instead of 0 and a 1, it now can be in a superposition of a 0 and a 1. And because of that, there are certain algorithms that computers can solve using qubits that classical computers cannot. For example, factoring, unstructured search, optimization algorithms, simulation of other quantum processes, which may have applications in drug discovery, for example. So there are many algorithms that people know of, but many algorithms that we don't know. Like, people are building quantum computers, but and there is also an active field where computer scientists and complexity theorists are looking at what are new algorithms where quantum computing could be useful for. So it's a very, very fast growing field.
Okay, sir. Here's the second question. Since you are in USA, don't you think that India needs you more than America? Or is it like India failed to provide the right platform to you?
That's a hard one. So it's a very, very good question, by the way. I would say it's the truth is probably a mix of both. So I am in very close discussions with several of my Indian colleagues. And as I said, through this WebHub summit that's happening right now as we speak, the goal of this summit is to see how people like me who left India to come to the United States and get to where we are in our fields can now use that knowledge to contribute back to growing knowledge and actually creating that same ecosystem back in India. On the other hand, I would also say that things have changed dramatically in India since when I was a student. In my times, I remember there used to be almost no real research that used to happen in our circle in IIT. And nowadays, there are some really, really good research groups in IIT Kanpur and other IITs and ICERs and TIFR and so forth that are doing cutting edge research in every single area. So very good question. And I absolutely am working on trying to bring that knowledge back to creating that same ecosystem and same opportunities in India.
Okay, sir. Here's the question related to the second question only, like your views about the future of scientific research in India and especially in Bihar.
So in Bihar, one thing I was it was very pleasing for me to see is the opening of IIT Patna. I have visited them in a few times that I was in Patna. Patna, I think Bihar in general, but Patna especially, has a lot of potential. I mean, so many students I know of, both my friends in IIT Kanpur as well as students later on who I met, came from Bihar, very, very talented students, but they did not stay back in Bihar because there was no opportunity. I mean, I just could not imagine a very, very high-ranking JE, or student or somebody ranking in the regional entrance examination would stay in Patna. But nowadays that is changing. So I think things are changing, and there will be more opportunities, especially with the advent of IIT Patna.
Okay, sir. There's a question by a BBA student. So far we have read about Newtonian mechanics, which include classical physics. Then came Einstein mechanics, and then in 21st century, Stephen Hawking with the theory of everything. People talk about sustainable energy, nuclear powered nations, but I believe the future is quantum energy. So he asked, how do quantum dimensions solve all the mystery which is still unknown to us? Is the movies of Marvel's DC comic suggest new multidimensional universe, and can we get into quantum void without disturbing quantum information?
Wow, that I think you know more than I do about some of these topics. That's a good question. So okay, so what I would say is that you're absolutely right that Newtonian mechanics started describing how macroscopic things work. When you throw a ball, calculating that parabolic trajectory that it goes through. When you drop something, what is this velocity when it drops on ground? Now Newtonian mechanics stopped to it failed to explain reality when you went to small objects, okay, very tiny objects like atoms, molecules, and so on. And that is where we needed quantum mechanics. Okay. On the other hand, Newtonian mechanics also failed to explain physics reality properly when you went to things that move very fast. Okay, for example, when you have two trains crossing each other, if one is going at 40 kilometer per hour, the other one is going at 50 kilometer per hour, you add their speeds, 90 kilometer per hour, that's your relative speed the other train is traveling. But if something is traveling at 2/3 the speed of light and another thing is traveling at 2/3 the speed of light the other way, your relative velocity doesn't become 1.4 by 3 times the speed of light, because speed of light is the ultimate limit. So that is what led Einstein to discover the theory of relativity, to explain things that are moving very fast. And now to combine those two, quantum mechanics and relativity, people came up with the theory of general relativity. That was also Einstein, by the way. But there are things in physics, such as gravity, is one of the most important ones that has not yet been unified into one single theory that can be explained within one theory: gravity, quantum mechanics, and relativity. So I would say physics yet is not known. We don't know how nature works. Okay, so all those movies are great. I mean, there have been lots of speculations on high dimensional world and so forth, but we are still scratching the surface on our understanding of nature.
Okay, thank you, sir. Here is the question. How did you face the difficulties coming in the way of your great journey and keep yourself motivated and determined all the time?
That's a hard one. I was motivated because I loved what I did. As I said, that I really never set myself a destination. I followed my heart's desire. I loved my subject. I had a loving family, my parents, my sister, my wife. Um, I but there were challenges, of course, when I left Patna for Kanpur. That was quite a challenge. Then when I left Kanpur to go to the United States in Boston, that was another set of challenge. And then from there, when I graduated and thrown into the real world, when I had my first job, and then so things kept evolving. But life changes, and you adapt to it. You learn new things. You just have to keep your spirits up and do what you love to do and try to be good at it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. There is again one interesting question. So do you think time traveling is possible? Elon Musk once said it can be in future, but he is not sure. Do you think it is possible?
Absolutely, yes. So traveling in time to the future is possible. Traveling back to the past is not possible. For the person who is asking this question, I would suggest go read the Theory of Relativity. In fact, if I remember correctly, we do a little bit of relativity in class 12 physics. But the one famous example is when two twin brothers, they hop on a spaceship. Okay, so one brother hops on a spaceship, the other one stays on ground, and the brother who goes on the spaceship, he travels for very fast to a galaxy far away, and he turns back and comes back around. And on his watch, maybe a month has passed. And the other brother who stayed on ground, he would have maybe aged, say, 50 years. And this is not science fiction. This is reality. But of course, you cannot go back in time as far as the current physical understanding is. Things get violated. But yes, you can travel to the future.
Okay, thank you, sir. One student has asked how to keep ourselves calm and bring out the correct decisions even during pressurized situations.
That's a very good question. You will face pressure many times in your life during preparing for that final exam or taking that joint entrance examination. Staying calm, it is very hard for me to preach here because I was tense in many of those situations too. But trying to stay calm is very important in your actually functioning better during those stressful times. So some things I did, again, this is hard for me to say, and students might say that this is, no, I'm saying it in hindsight. The night before a very stressful exam like a JE or a final exam, a CBSE board exam, I got a very good night's sleep. I did not stay up late studying, which is the worst thing you could do the night before a very stressful event, and that has your brain much more functioning, and you can actually do better and stay calm during that stressful time.
Okay. Here's the last question, sir. Penultimate one. Last will be my question. You must have seen ups and downs in your journey of life. Can you share your mistakes and failures and how you really converted them into success?
Very good question. Like everybody else, I made many mistakes, okay, throughout my life, both in personal life as well as in professional life. And what is really important is to learn from your mistakes, is to, first of all, to know when you actually made a mistake. And the mistakes could be in making the wrong choices, whether it be, be people in your life, or be choices you make in terms of career move, or that didn't quite happen to me as much, but even within my career, deciding on going after things versus certain things that you learn very quickly that something did not work. You wanted to work a certain way, it did not work. Maybe you hired somebody, it did not work very well. Maybe you did not work very well. I did not work very well with a person, maybe a colleague or a collaborator, or something did not work out because I could have done something better. The most important thing is to learn from those interactions, those mistakes, and to tell yourself why those did not work, and make sure that in your future interactions that you correct them and you learn from them. And as I said, learning is a lifelong process, so you have to keep learning. I'm still learning, and nobody is perfect, and you just have to continue learning from your mistakes throughout your lives.
Okay, this is question something out of this. Sir, how is your father doing? I was not knowing that your father is SN Guha. I think he taught me in science college when I was doing intermediate. Yeah, in 2008. He was there in physics department. He was also the principal during that time. So yes, I was not knowing.
Yeah, that's very good to know. He's doing well. He had a December last year. He had a unfortunate heart surgery, a CABG, but he miraculously he's been recovering very, very well from that. So he's doing very well. He's right now, and he and my mother are in Bangalore, staying with my sister and her husband, quarantined because of COVID. So they are dying to come back to Patna, but we are trying to not have them not travel right now. But they love Patna and coming there. I'm sure they'll be coming back soon.
Thank you very much, sir. Over to Keshav. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, end is not the end. In fact, end means effort never dies. With this determined thought, I would like to give my heartfelt gratitude to each one of us present over here to make this session a successful one. Now, I would like to call Rahul Shah of BMC second year to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Rahul.
Good morning to one and all present here. Gratitude is the fairest blossom that springs from the soul. I take this opportunity to express my deep sense of gratitude to all those who have made this event a fruitful one for us. First and foremost, I would like to thank our guest speaker for the day, Dr. Saikat Guha, for sharing his valuable experiences with us and providing us with a lot of information and knowledge. I also express my heartfelt thanks to Reverend Father P.T. Augustine S.J. and Reverend Father Norbert Menezes S.J., former principals of St. Michael's High School, Patna, for sparing their precious time to be here with us. How can we forget to thank our Reverend Father, Principal Dr. T. Nishant S.J. for giving us the opportunity to interact with Dr. Saikat Guha. I also thank our Professor Samar Riaz for handling the question and answer session as well as for organizing this session. I thank Adviti of BBA 3B for conducting the prayer that made this atmosphere so pleasant. I also thank Keshav Kumar Soni from BBA 3B for anchoring this session so well. I would also like to thank Mukesh sir, Piyush Verma sir, and Syed sir for helping us with the technical things. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our lovely audience for being a patient listener and also for this wonderful session. Jai Xavier's, Jai Bharat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saikat. It was wonderful listening to you, your story. You're at ease. You felt very comfortable with us, I felt.
Thank you very much for having me. I
Yeah.
really visit